They might talk about humor, music, film, books, football and box sets, exercise and maybe even food, trivia and sport, politics and health, sometimes well-being too. On the Life with Brian. On the Life with Brian.
Hello, Mark here, and welcome to Life with Brian, the Brian McClare podcast. Brian, hello, are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I am tip-top, thank you very much. And as usual, Matthew is here too. How's it going, Matthew?
Good, thanks, Mark. Hello, Brian. Good to see you. Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, yes, so you should be. Two Scottish legends. Well, one Scottish legend and me.
No, I disagree.
And the legend in question has worn a number of hats throughout his life. Singer-songwriter with iconic Scottish punk band The Skids, TV presenter, filmmaker and producer, and much more. It's a pleasure to welcome Richard Jobson to the podcast. How are you doing, Richard?
Listen, thanks for having me. I'm very excited. I'm a bit of a fanboy tonight. I'm a bit of a Brian McClare fan, a passionate Celtic fan. And I even followed Man United for a while, only because he played for them, but because I'm not interested in Man United. But I was definitely interested in them when Brian played, and he was brilliant when he played for them. He was really one of their greatest ever players, I think.
Well, you can't get much more of a compliment than that, can you, Brian?
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you very much, Richard. Now, to get over my little bit, I had a little look through my record collection today.
There it is. Masquerade.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it is not the double single.
You know what? One of the strangest things about that song, which I'm most proud of, is I managed to get Guernica into it. And I remember all the other members of the band, apart from Stuart Adamson, who knew what Guernica meant. Obviously, it's the Spanish town during the Civil War that got bombarded by scumbag Franco and his Nazi pals. And we managed to get it in a song. I was really proud of that. You know, we were kids from a housing estate in Fife, and we managed to get, and we've always been very left-wing, we were a very left-wing band, and we managed to get Guernica into a song, which I think is great. And all these kids used to sing along with it. You're thinking, no, Guernica, but they're singing it, which was great fun.
Which is, and it's also a very good painting as well, or a picture.
Indeed, it is a great painting, yes.
And then I also came across this one.
Oh, yes. Yeah, look.
Yeah, but for some strange reason, right? So, well, not strange reason. So you may, well, I like the top with your initials in it. Clearly you were destined for fame, you know, or you're going to have your own clothing range.
I think that was maybe because everything I owned in those days in the band used to get nicked. So I thought, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my name on it, so it's clear that it's mine. The other guys in the Skids were not very aggressive, Brian. They were quite gentle guys. Stuart Adamson was a very gentle guy. Obviously, hugely talented, and so were the other ones. I was a complete feral lunatic in the early days, and I didn't really expect, and this may sound a little bit melodramatic, but I didn't really expect to be around for very long. I have a health condition. I'm epileptic, which was pretty bad during the days of the Skids. And so I didn't really expect to get past my early 20s because it was that bad. So I thought I was just going to make the most of every day, you know, and I was a very feral, strange, crazy young guy. I joined the band when I was 16. So, and I was thrown into the limelight pretty quickly because we got a record deal by the age of 17, and we were suddenly on top of the pops and, you know, shagging Money Pants people by 18. I mean, you know, these things that come on, it was an amazing experience for a young guy. And it all happened a wee bit too quickly for me to quite understand. But as I say, I didn't really think I'd be around for that long. So I made the most of every single day. Strangely enough, Brian, here I am. I'm the one that's still here. All the other ones are dead. And the very thing that weighed my life down, which was epilepsy, it was the very thing that saved me, because all the things that they did, the boozing, the drugs and stuff, I didn't do any of that. So invariably, it was the thing that's kept me alive, which is kind of ironic.
And I've got 2 of these for some strange reason.
Jeez, you are a collector.
You said you were a fanboy, Richard. I think there's only the real fanboy is Brian.
But the thing is, though, I don't know why I've got 2 of them. Both of them in white vinyl.
Well, I think that's quite collectible, isn't it? I mean, I think
Probably,
people pay a lot of money for these things. So
and
you don't need the money, though, of course. I can tell by that wallpaper.
I have nothing. And then I've also got this one as well. So,
oh wow, God, it's amazing that you were actually even interested in the armory show. I've just written a book about that. It's just come out called Castles in Spain, and it's about my relationship with John McGee, who was from Greenock. And he's an amazing guy, John. He lots of things people don't know about him was he was a brilliant painter, first of all, the artist. He went to art school. He was also an amazing cook. Him and his wife, she was half Chinese, and the 2 of them would cook these incredible lunches. And also, he was a black belt at karate. Who would have thought that? But John McGee. He was a tough guy, from Greenock's a tough town, right? I mean, it's not a place I'm that familiar with, but everyone tells me it's a tough place to come from. But John, sadly, he believed the myth, of rock and roll, that you could be wasted and you could still be creative, and you can't. You just can't. It's complete crap. And I'm sure you've seen it, Brian, with players who thought they could drink rather than train hard, and they paid the price for that. I'm sure that you can't do both. And John believed you could, and sadly, he's no longer with us for that very reason, I think. Yeah, well,
like you said there, I mean, there are there's different reasons, I suppose, for participating in intoxication, I suppose, or diversion. Part of it maybe is to do with dealing with being something you maybe aspired to. So maybe John and yourself maybe wanted to be involved in the music business, or in some kind of thing that, clearly something that was better than the scheme that you grew up in, and an escape, the same kind of thing. Although, and then when you get to that bit where you are involved in it, there are lots and lots of different distractions and, I suppose, temptations. And then also, how do you deal with it? Because
you're young, you're very young. No one, we're from obviously I'm older than you, but from an era where nobody trains you for this stuff. Suddenly I'm a 16-year-old guy. My mum works in the docks in Rosyth dockyard, and my dad's a coal miner. And I'm not even from a big city. I'm from Fife, which is kind of a rural place. And suddenly at the age of 16, 17, you're chucked into the limelight in a way that you could never have ever dreamed of. Suddenly you're on top of the pops. That was the biggest show on the planet at the time. Everybody watched that program religiously on a Thursday night. So your life changed very quickly. And, you weren't equipped to deal with it. I certainly wasn't. And I went about it in a different way from them. I embraced every minute of it, but I never did what they did. I never got into the booze and the drugs, and they did. The lifestyle, it was still to this day, I can never understand the tragedy of Stuart Adamson, how he ended up hanging himself in a hotel in Hawaii as a beaten man. It was very tragic. He was an alcoholic, and McGee, the combination of booze and drugs, he just never let go of it. And I tried my best, with certainly not with Stuart, because Stuart, really, that problem really only occurred in big country. It never really reared its head during the Skids. But McGee, I tried hard to tune him back into a different world, but he wasn't interested. He was interested in, he had been with Susie and the Banshees, Brian, and he'd been playing big stadiums. And then he was involved with Visage. I don't know if you remember them, with Steve Strange, hugely successful. and he was regarded probably as the greatest guitar player of his generation. And what a generation that was. So, he had all this stuff flying around him. I mean, but people used to flatter me. I never used to believe them. I thought it didn't really mean that, so I never really took it to heart. I just let it fly over me and moved on. But it was a crazy time, it was a crazy time. It was a time where you could come from the background that we came from, a housing estate in Fife or a housing estate in Greenock, and you could go off and propel yourself into the world and do something creative. I think it's much harder now. I wouldn't like to be the same wee guy that I was today. I think it would be nearly impossible for a band like the Skids to exist in 2022. I just don't think it would happen because it's a completely different world now. So that punk era was a very special time, I think, for people from different parts of society.
Do you think that you're the youngest of 5, I think? Are you youngest
of my family?
Yeah.
I'm the middle one. So I have 2 older and 2 below me, yeah.
Right, so do you think that dealing with the flattery was something that you were able to treat with, disdain or contempt or joy, depending which way you want to look? Because your older brothers, and probably younger brothers, would always say to you that, look, you're a wee boy from, or who do you think you are?
Yeah, who do you think you are? Yeah,
a
little bit of that. Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, it's funny when I look back on it. I mean, I used to hang out with the guys from Sex Pistols, and my flatmate was Steve Severin from Susie and the Banshees. And I tell people that now, and they go, wow, that must have been amazing. But I was more in awe of football. Football was, and it still is, it's still the thing that I look towards every day. I look for the Celtic result on a regular basis. A German team, St. Pauli, I check out their result all the time. And I'm more in awe of people from that world than I am, from the kind of music world, which is strange. And I kind of retained that. I always thought, what will I do when I meet Kenny Dalglish, for example? And I never met him. And then I'm kind of quite glad I haven't met him because, it's just, he remains a bit of a mystery. You first came into my life socially because I was friends with a guy called Pat Nevin, and when he played at Chelsea. And when I was a little kid, my grandmother lived in London, and she used to send me a Chelsea strip every year for my Christmas. So I thought, Chelsea will be my team when I get to England. And I remember going with my ex-wife to see Chelsea when Pat Nevin played for them. And their fans were absolutely repulsive. They were really everything that I believed in, they didn't believe in. But Pat was a good guy, and he was a guy that was, who wanted to understand a lot of things that were going on around him. And he talked a lot about you in a very flattering way about, we'll talk about football players who've read a book and football players who are interested in the world that's going on around them and the politics of the world. And maybe also football players who weren't listening to the Commodores, who were listening to maybe punk rock or maybe more interested in music. And certainly you came into the equation because, you were friends, right? You and Pat?
Still are, yeah. Yeah, seen them last month or so, yeah. And I was interested in laughing. I mean, I know you're a massive David Bowie fan, but just that there's a couple of there's a kind of daft connection between them on the day that Bowie passed away was the same day that I found out that Pat had a hair transplant.
Is that for real?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's a true story, and I don't know what I was more devastated about. But,
yes,
so
well, that's very disappointing to hear. Bowie's death was beyond disappointment. That was a life-changing moment.
Just saying, it's like
but Pat Nevin having a hair transplant, God. Does narcissism have no end?
As much as Pat's always had all the right boxes ticked, there has always been something to do with Pat and the way he's always wanted to look and how he's wanted people to perceive him. I mean, I always look at the same kind of guys. He's just a normal guy from East End of Glasgow who has, very much like ourselves, worked very, very hard at a particular discipline, had the opportunities, took the opportunities, continued to take the opportunities, and done really well for himself.
No, he's done good. He's good. I mean, I think early on when I met him at the time when I was involved with the Armoury show, and he was more into the kind of Bono U2 thing at the time. And I think people thought he looked like Bono, which I said, Pat, your nose is too big, man. Do you know what I mean? You don't look like Bono. You're the same height as him, but you're not the same. And he used to get, because he lived behind me in Kensington. I lived on Kensington High Street at the time, and Pat lived 2 streets behind me. And so I used to spend a lot of time with him. And he was intrigued by the stuff that I would be reading, the books that I'd be reading. And so he definitely had a kind of sense that he wanted to participate in a world beyond just football, because I think he felt that limiting, and I remember meeting David Speedy with him one time. I just thought, oh my God. I just thought this guy, he was as unpleasant off the field as he was on it. And I met some of the other players. A guy called Kerry Dixon played centre forward at the time. And I mean, they were all, very proficient football players, but they were very disappointing in the flesh, And that sounds really patronising, because why should they be interested in they were sportsmen, they were athletes. But I was just disappointed they weren't interested in anything beyond, the narrow gauge of the field that they were in, which was, of course, playing for this London club with the most appalling fans in the United Kingdom. Well, that's not true. They have a rival in that department. We know who they are, don't we?
I was going to ask you about that, Richard, because I've been doing my homework on you, and you obviously grew up as a Celtic fan, which is something I wanted to ask you about, because you came from the east of Scotland, didn't you? So it's not really a natural progression. But so Celtic was your first love then? From what
well, my dad supported Hibs, a team in Edinburgh. I used to go a lot to see them with him. And I used to love going there on Tuesday night because they were playing like Juventus, and it was something called the Fairs Cup. And Easter Road's got a slope on it, but Celtic were my passion, really, because I was young enough to understand the Lisbon Lions, and I was getting to the age where I kind of understood what that was. And my brothers, and not my oldest brother, but the brother above me was a football player. He played for Raith Rovers and lots of small Scottish clubs, but he was a good player. And, he kind of introduced me to the whole Celtic thing very early on. And also I was brought up, my father was a union guy in the coal mines. So I was brought up as a socialist. So I kind of understood that Celtic fans were leaned in that direction. So it just made sense. And then when I went to see them for the first time, I just knew I was home. When I went to Celtic Park for the first time, I just knew it was my home. And I knew all the songs. My father was a Protestant and my mother was a Catholic. So I came from both sides of that strange Scottish sectarian divide. But my mother had really taught me all these songs. And it was only when I really reached my first couple of visits to Celtic Park that I understood these songs were political, because there was lots of people singing them around me. And so even that kind of started to have a massive effect on the way I thought about who I was, who the people around me were, and what my worldview was. And I started to identify that mostly with the club, with Celtic. So I think it meant more than just a football team and a football game. It meant more than that to me. It was more of an identity.
You remember the first
an identity that was formed even more because of a lot of the people in my area supported Rangers, and they had a very different worldview to what I had, which I don't think has changed much.
Do you remember the first game you went to?
Well, I like to say it was Celtic Rangers, and I didn't actually have a ticket. I came in on the last. In the old days, Brian, they used to open the gates up at the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So to let people go, and so it was at Parkhead, and it was Celtic Rangers, and Celtic won 1-0. Jimmy Johnson scored, but I actually came in. There was an area of Celtic park called the Jungle, and you came in there but it was divided between Celtic and Rangers fans. And unbeknownst to me, because it was my first time there and I was only a wee kid, I ran in with 20 minutes to go, and I ran in the Rangers part with all my colours and all my badges on, and I was introduced to the Rangers way very quickly, and it was really terrifying. And they still terrify me, Rangers fans, to this day. Actually, they're quite a terrifying bunch.
And you didn't you write in your memoirs about this incident with fighting with Rangers fans or having some kind of, I don't know if it was that game, or didn't you go to an away game at Ibrox and something happened and you were?
I went to. This is the first time I saw Kenny Dalglish actually play, and he scored a wonderful goal. And it's the first time I ever went to Ibrox, and I've never been back since. It was pretty terrifying. You know, you just knew you were in you'd landed on a different planet, and it wasn't safe. You know, it was pretty scary stuff. So I was a wee guy, and I think that kind of left a stamp in me that this was not just about rivalry. This was hatred. You know, it was something that was. I mean, I don't hate Rangers fans at all, and but I despair sometimes at their worldview, but I don't hate them. That's for sure.
I'm just trying to work out that. So this would have been early mid-60s, late.
No, they were into the 70s. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking when you first went, if Jimmy Johnson was.
Yeah, it could be 1970, I think. And in those days, you weren't really allowed in at my age. You were lifted over the turnstile. Had these really fairly old metal turnstiles, and you were just the kids were just lifted over by somebody. I would go on a supporters bus from Fife called the Lochgelly Supporters Club, which was run by this wonderful. It's still going, yeah. And it was run by this wonderful man called Arthur McKenna. I don't know if you ever met him when you were at Celtic, but he was a great man. He had a lot of troubles in his life with alcohol, and he overcame them. He told me this story one time where he woke up and his face was frozen to the ground. He'd been on a bender for 2 or 3 days, and his face was stuck to the ground. And he realised he had to change his ways, and he did. And he never touched a drink in his life again. But he did wonderful things for the local community, and he encouraged us young kids to go to the games. You know, so we went pretty much every week, home and away. I mean, I went to all the away games too, because you could, in Scotland, and the European games. One of the most indelible memories I have is Celtic versus Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
And I was at what's called the Rangers end of Celtic Park, Brian, and
73.
Atletico Madrid just literally kicked Celtic off the park. I've never seen anything like it. You know, the violence on the park was appalling. I don't know if you remember that game.
1973, I think it was, yeah.
It was a shocking, it was my first experience of a Spanish or, continental style football at the time, which was pretty negative and pretty violent.
McClare's on mark!
Life with Brian.
I was going to say, Richard, when it comes to football, it seems like you got quite a few interests. You grew up as an avid Celtic fan, but did I read that you used to follow Arsenal for a bit as well?
Well, I used to go there with the Lydons, John Lydon, or Johnny Rotten, sorry, and all that gang. They were all from that part of London. So I went there. It was kind of fun because after my Chelsea experience, which was just put me off them forever. So it was more of a social thing.
Yeah.
So we'd all hang out together and on the North Bank. So it was good fun. I didn't really have any passion for them, like I have for Celtic. And St. Pauli, I think, is the other team that I really care about. It's a team in Hamburg. They play in the second division there. They were briefly in the Bundesliga and went straight back down again. And we're normally fighting relegation into the indeterminate regional leagues, if we get relegated from Division 2. So we hang on. But it's got really nothing to do with football. In essence, you go there because they're a kind of punk rock team. They play great music before, middle, and after the game. There's a great camaraderie with the fans. And it's a political club. They were the first team in the world, I think, to wear LGBT colours. They were the first team to actively take a stand as a club against right-wing factions. They have a T-shirt that says Gegen Recht, which in German means smash the right. So all of these things made a lot of sense to me. And of course, they used one of my songs, The Saints Are Coming, which helped. They don't use my version of it. They use the U2 stroke Pat Nevin version of it, which irritates the shit out of me. But nonetheless, it's my song. I wrote it. And U2 did do a version of it with Green Day, which was a massive hit, obviously, all over the world. So they used that. So there's lots of connections. My dad's family were from that part of the world as well. So that helps a lot. I really love that club. I'm very, very fond of them. Actually, when I was last at a game, I went with my son and we went to this bar and we went in because he's very fond of German beer. And it was a Rangers bar because the Rangers are associated with HSV. Yeah. And I was really shocked. So we kind of left there pretty promptly. And we're certainly not giving in any money. It's hilarious because they even had a pool table there. Pool tables are normally green. They changed the felt to blue.
I think I've been in that bar, actually.
It was just hilarious. You got to laugh. But so I don't like HSV. Their fans they've got a huge club. They've got a huge fan base. I mean, 60,000 people can fit in that stadium. Only 28,000 can get into the Millentor. But it doesn't matter. The atmosphere at our place is so much better, and it's a fantastic vibe. And they're doing incredibly well, which worries me because we're not a corporate club, so it's the idea of taking sponsorship and is going to be difficult for all of us if that happens. But, life has to change and it has to evolve. So I guess it's a strange thing to say, isn't it, that you want a team that you really care about not to be successful. That's kind of beyond, just doesn't make any sense. But
success doesn't really fit with St. Pauli. I mean, for example, one of their most famous T-shirts says "Wir sind Zweitklassig," which has a double meaning, really. We are second class, but also is kind of like we should be in the second division. So, it doesn't really sit well, I think, with the image of St. Pauli to be successful. But I think being, let's say favourites to go up whilst Hamburg are more than likely going to miss out again, will sort of soften the blow if that was to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Hamburg used to have this clock in their stadium, which was an electronic clock, and it was a prototype of an electronic clock before we understood what electronic clocks were. And it had the amount of years, months, days, hours, and seconds that they had been in the Bundesliga, and then they dropped down. And they had to get rid of the clock. It was just one of the gives me pleasure. That was just a great moment. And there's an arrogance in even where their stadium is, and it's quite a wealthy part of the city. Hamburg's a very beautiful place, I might add. And St. Pauli's in the St. Pauli district. It's like most British men think of that area as the Reeperbahn, unfortunately, and that's at the heart of it. But it's much more than that. It's where the docks are. It's traditionally an area where originally Catholics were allowed to continue with their religion there, but they weren't allowed to in any other part of Germany. And then once they had assimilated and become part of German society, it became a Jewish area. So the logo of the club is a Jewish star and a Christian cross. And now it's a Muslim area, so it's always been that kind of place. It's got, there's parts of the world that always have, that kind of rough and tumble about them. And that's, you said that's where sometimes great football clubs come from, like Celtic were in the East End of Glasgow, and it's still a bit of a rough old place, where Celtic Park is. But out of that comes something magical. And, Pauli have got an aura about them that I think is really important in the world we're in, where football's become so enormous and so corporate, and suddenly these clubs are owned by the wrong people, as we're witnessing with Chelsea. And I mean, Man City's not a team, is it? It's a country, that team. It's like, I mean, who can beat Man City? I don't think even Liverpool will, they've got two teams, haven't they? They've got they're the team that they select, and there's another team on the bench that could play with probably any European club. So, I love the kind of the analog nature of St. Pauli. They're not a supercharged. They've not got that kind of shiny Dubai-like ambition, which I find repulsive.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you find yourself that St. Pauli is where your loyalties lie now? Is that because you've become disillusioned with top flight, I'd say English football, not necessarily Scottish football, top flight football?
Well, I'm a bit disillusioned with Scottish football too, because it's not, it's not in great shape. But I support Celtic because they're part of my life. As I tried to say to you earlier, I identified more with the club than I did with my family, which is a kind of perverse thing to say. And so they meant an awful lot to me, and still do. And but there's part of me that Celtic are not a political club, but their fans are, and I love that about the fans. I think it's a very important thing that those fans have got. I love it when they fly Palestinian flags and they give it to the establishment. But behind the scenes, Celtic's owned by the establishment. So there's a lot of paradoxes and hypocrisies at play in all of these clubs. St. Pauli has got something very beautiful about it that I fear might change with success. And but that's what happens in life, isn't it?
But there's already been examples of that, Richard, when they were previously in the Bundesliga, or certain things have happened where the fans were regaled against it and they had to back down whoever was responsible at a particular time. And it's not that long ago, had no option but to turn around and say, well, actually, we got that wrong. They're talking about building a new stadium. They're talking about embracing all these things you're talking about. And the people who are the foundations and the bedrock of the club said, no, we're not having it. And they, because of their protestation and their voice, were eventually listened to, and it remained to be what it is, along the lines of saying we're not interested in the same thing you're saying, that our status is that we go and do. And this is the thing I've always loved about football and sport and any other entertainment, is that I appreciate that people graft and have to graft to earn some corn, some money, to be able to enjoy themselves. That's what you do. You should work to live, right? Not live to work to live. And I think that's certainly reflected in the St. Pauli fans who go and do whatever they're doing, earn that much money, and go along to that football club to enjoy what they want to be able to do. Now, whether they're in the Bundesliga or the Bundesliga 2 or any other division is not really that particularly relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some of my best times there when they've been beaten, at home. I mean, but the atmosphere afterwards, because a couple of seasons ago, when you got a ticket from the Fanland, and that's how you apply for a ticket, it would be your transport from the airport to the centre of Hamburg, and then from Hamburg you get a tram down to St. Pauli.
Yeah,
and it got you a beer at half time if you wanted it. It's not something that interested me, but you got a free beer with your ticket. And it was like €20 or something. It was like you got the whole experience, and you were really, and not at any point in time in that experience where you ripped off. Because even though you got beat 3-0 at home or something, it didn't matter, because after, everyone stays after I was at the Arsenal-Liverpool game the other night, and Arsenal played really well, for 45 minutes. Yeah. And they had the chances to take the lead. They didn't take them. And then Liverpool went up and did what they do. They scored 2 goals that were just ruthless. But the people all around me were all leaving with 10 minutes to go. You're thinking, what? Where are you going? You probably spent, I don't know how much those tickets cost there. I was a guest to somebody, but what, 60 quid, 80 quid, something like that, maybe more.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
And they're all leaving with 10 minutes to go. And their team's still in the game, 2-0, 10 minutes, and that doesn't mean a thing. and they were all leaving. Whereas at St. Pauli, no one leaves. Everyone stays. And then, I've done a gig afterwards because you just say, well, we bring our acoustic guitars and we just set up and we do an acoustic Skids set or cover versions, which I'm going to do a wee plug here because I don't know if you know about this. We've just released this Songs from a Haunted Ballroom, which is about the Kinema Ballroom in Dunfermline, but we've done an album of cover versions of all the songs that meant a lot to us. Wow. There's some obvious things like Complete Control by The Clash, but there's some ones that may surprise people, like Rock On by David Essex. Right, who would have thought? That's a cracking song.
Great record.
Is that because you saw him performing there, or?
No, I tell you why it is, and there's a monologue that I speak in the song. That in the ballroom, this was the East of Scotland's version of Barrowlands, the Kinema Ballroom. There was a gang from Dunfermline called the AV Toy, which means the Abbey View Toy, and they were a notorious gang, really quite frightening. And they were right next to my school. I went to a school called St. Columba's, and so it was a really tough estate around there. And these guys they knew me very well, and they knew my brothers and stuff. And they never really gave me any trouble. But when they were going to kick off in this club on a Friday or a Saturday night, they would go to the DJ and say, play Rock On by David Essex. And that was the cue for all the other gang members to know that something really bad was going to happen. And also for us who were in the know, it gave us a chance to go and hide somewhere because something really bad was going to happen between all these kind of lunatic and violent gangs. But the AV Toy were the worst of them all. They're quite a notorious gang during that time in the 70s when these things were. So we've done a wee more. Yeah, it's really just a little homage to that kind of period. But it's if I'm allowed to say so, it's not a bad record because we did it old school punk wise. Right. I did the vocals in this room that I'm in right now, and the other guys did the guitar parts in their bedrooms. So it was like an old-fashioned DIY album, like we did when we were kind of 16. And it feels like that, it feels fresh. And we still play. I mean, just before the lockdown, the last gig we did was the Albert Hall in London. And it was a magic moment, playing is one of those things you thought, well, we'll never play there, but we did. And, I always associate the Albert Hall with Pomp and Circumstance and all that Rule Britannia bullshit. And I managed to get 6,000 fat bald blokes to sing Boris Johnson as a wanker. It was a really great moment. It was just great. That was my version of Pomp and Circumstance. My wife said to me she's never smelt stale testosterone like that in her room. She said, there's no women there. And it's when we first started playing again, we did Newcastle, and I didn't know how many people were going to come, and maybe nobody, but it was banged out, in this big room, maybe 3,000 people or something. And it was an amazing evening. And the promoter came backstage afterwards and he said, my God, you must feel like David Cassidy. I went, what do you mean, David Cassidy? He went, no, you must feel like David Cassidy. He said, there's like 400 people waiting by the stage door. And I went, really? I said, how many of them are women? He went, none. Yes, big fat bald block. Sorry, Mark, don't you take that.
He was one of them.
No, it was
screaming in the background.
It was so it's been great fun out playing again. I actually prefer smaller venues.
But I had a look at some of the gigs today, and I like the idea of you and Big Country.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing. That's in May. Well, when is that? That's it's not that far off.
In June.
June, that's it. Yeah, well, yeah. No, come along because it's great fun. Because what I do now, rather than just play the songs, I tell a lot of stories.
Well,
and I think people like that, And sometimes there are people who just go get on with it, play the music, and shut the fuck up. But,
Matthew and I went to see Julian Cope just before lockdown, the first lockdown, in the little liquid rooms in Edinburgh.
Great.
And he's probably spoke more than he sang.
Did he?
It was like
or did you like that?
Oh, the experience was great. I love it, Richard, because it's a little bit of the kind of things I'm doing myself now about telling stories to people who are an avid audience who want to listen to the stories behind the people, the games, the characters, and it's very much that I'm attracted to now about music.
Yeah.
You know, I love music. It's been this that it's if I wouldn't, you know, I love music. And I'm really engrossed in it. But when I read little snippets of things about, you know, like you I think you wrote Saints Are Coming in when you were 15. Is that right?
I wrote the words to it, yes, in Dunfermline
Library. In the library,
yeah.
The library, which there's little things like that are like the library, you know.
Well, the thing is,
going to the library, you know, it's just
exactly.
the sort of thing it'd be difficult to explain to some people now. You know, like,
remember
a library? What's that?
I came from a family of 5 boys, and it was like a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom house. So you know, there's no place to do your, you know, to sit and write, and also. You come from this macho mining community, sitting writing poetry is not going to go down well. But I was very lucky. My oldest brother was you'll love this, my oldest brother was a Hare Krishna monk.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
He was some guy. I mean, talking about having kahunas, this guy, you know, like from that community where it was so macho, this guy was walking around in orange robes and, you know, he was something else. And I was very fortunate because I shared the bedroom with him. So a lot of the music that he introduced me to when I was a wee guy, you know, was right out there. Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and Leonard Cohen and Bowie and Roxy Music and all this stuff. So, you know, whereas a lot of my school friends were listening to like, I don't know, like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Genesis or Gary Glitter, some of them. Do you know what I mean? Even. So I was very fortunate that I was brought into the world of what people regard as avant-garde seemed quite normal to me, actually. You know, it wasn't frightening. So when punk rock came along, it just made perfect sense because you were already a punk in a way, you know, by that time. But my oldest brother had a huge, he was very influential on the way I thought about stuff and having the bravery to be different, you know, and that's kind of why I always loved David Bowie, because that was kind of fundamentally the subtext in every Bowie song was, you know, you might feel alienated, but there's other people out there who are like that too, you know, and it could be for whatever reason you feel. I mean, I felt alienated as a kid because I was epileptic, you know, and the era that I grew up in, people treated that disease like you had the devil's mark on you, you know. So it was, and nobody wanted to go near you, you know, because they thought it was really scary. I mean, obviously, I've never seen it because I'm the person that's in the middle of it, but
you weren't left-handed as well, were you?
Not left-footed, but
left-footed, right?
Yeah, a left footer. Trust me, all the way through. Yes, I actually played football for a while. I played with a team called Leaving Royals from Fife, and they had an association with Aston Villa in England, and a lot of the young players were taken from there down, and they were really good, but. I think, you know, I don't know what it was like for you. Was it, you know, the 2 outlets I had, maybe football, but I was never going to be good enough. I knew that. You obviously were. And music was an accident, you know, just because it combined the way I looked and the stuff I was writing when Stuart Adamson saw me in Dunfermline. You know, I got the job. I remember going to the audition and the bass player said to him, "This guy's rubbish. He can't sing and he can't dance." And then Stuart Adamson went, "Perfect. It's exactly what we need." And that's how I got the job, from being kind of having a bit of front, you know, and really enjoying the kind of stage. I used to love the stage. Hugh Cornwall, when we used to tour with the Stranglers, because I was so young when we did our first tour, by Scottish law, I wasn't allowed to be professional, and I needed to continue with my education, so we had to find somebody who was a teacher. So we found that Hugh Cornwall from Stranglers used to teach English and geography and history, so we put him down as my teacher for after the gigs every night. I had to go to Hugh's room to do my English, history and geography lessons. And trust me, Hugh's still my friend to this day. He taught me many things, but he didn't tell me anything about geography, history, or English. That's for sure. It was amazing, mad times. You know, you're looking back with it. Steve Jones is still one of my dearest friends. You know, from the Sex Pistols, the guitar player. He was a terrible thief, Brian. he was just a thief, you know, and he couldn't stop himself. And
Klepto.
he was terrible. He was a terrible thief. And I remember one time he stayed with me. We were on top of the pops, and he came down, and we got up to a bit of mischief with Legs and Co. And we were in the flat in Facknell Kelly's flat in Earls Court, and he said to me, "Who lives next door?" He called me Jobbo. He said, "Who lives next door, Jobbo?" And I went, "Oh, it's a painter." He goes, "Oh, brilliant! I need some for my flat. I need some paint." He said, "No, it's not that kind of painter, Steve. He's like an artist painter. Does he use paint?" I said, "Well, of course he does. He's an artist." "Is he there?" I said, "No, he goes out a lot." She said, "I'm going to." It was Francis Bacon's place, Brian. Francis Bacon, great, and he was going in because he wanted to decorate his flat. And, you know, he could have gone in there and nicked a Francis Bacon. He was a terrible thief, though. I mean, you know, I've been with him, and then, like, my guitar, my beloved St. Pauli guitar would vanish. And I'd go, "Where's my guitar gone?" And I'd go down there, rehearsal space, the Sex Pistols rehearsal space in Denmark Street in central London. It's called Tin Pan Alley. It's all the music shops are there. And they had a space at the back. Sure enough, I'd go in. Paul Cook, the drummer, going, "All right, Jobbo." He said, "You come to get your stuff?" I went, "Yep. All my stuff, all nicked." Do you know what I mean? Everything. My record player, the speaker. He was a terrible, terrible thief. But I do love him to bits. He's got this wonderful radio show. I don't know if you've ever listened to it. It's called Jonesy's Jukebox, which he does from Los Angeles. It's really, really good, and he plays some great music. It's quite a character. But I think they're making a 3-part series about him. Danny Boyle, you know, the director, producer, he's doing a bit on his book. I don't know if you know this, but they made a film recently about the life of Alan McGee, you know, the Creation Records guy, called Creation Stories. And the producer was Danny Boyle, and he said, "Could you come and meet us at Elstree Studios?" And I went, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." He went, "What's it about?" I thought they wanted to use some of my music, and we're going to ask for permission to get it for like next to nothing, which is normally the case. And in fact, it was to read the part of Alan McGee's father in the film. Oh. And I read it, and I read him as a nice guy, because he said, "Just play him like your dad was." And I went, "All right, my dad was a really nice guy. You know, he never hit us, or he was a socialist. He was political. You know, he was a good guy." So I played him like my dad, and it was like hopeless. It's not what they wanted, right? So I went off. They said, "Go down to the makeup department and put the wig on, because you're going to have to be the young McGee and the old McGee." So I had to go down and get this Teddy Boy wig on. And these two Italian guys that were doing the makeup said, "Yeah, we need to put on the tattoos on your arm, like henna tattoos." I said, "I don't have any tattoos. I'm not into that." He goes, No, it's on henna. They're only there for 2 to 3 months and they go away. I said, "No, I'm not interested." No, you have to do it. You have to do it for Danny. I said, "But what are they?" He said, "We don't know what it means. It's a beautiful man on the white horse." I went, "No, you can." I said, "That's not what I'm talking about." And he said, "Well, what's the other one?" He said, "We don't know what it means. We don't know what it means. I read a hand with the 4 numbers, the 1, 6, 9, and 0. I said, "You can be fucking off with that as well." So I went back up to the reading that they were going to put me on camera. And of course, I was in a right old temper. The old me emerged. And I went in, and I've got this wig on. It's all been pinned into my head. And I'm like, and I go in there, and Ewan Bremner, who's playing Alan McGee, sitting there. Danny Boyle, they're all, Irvin Welsh, who wrote the script, they're all sitting there, and I went, "Don't you fucking talk to me." Like, I became this animal. And of course, that's what they wanted, you know. And there's a great scene in it where the young Alan McGee's coming into the house, and I'm off to a Masonic meeting. I've got all the gear on, you know, all the what do you call those, the bib and the penny thing that they wear, you know, around them, all that shit, the rings and the white gloves and all that. Oh, that's horrible stuff. And McGee's coming in, he's got this T-shirt on, and it says Sex Pistols, The Clash, Spunk, you know, fuck off, all this kind of stuff on his T-shirt. And the father, who's just this big Glaswegian bear, you know, he's going out of the house, and he says to the kid, Don't you embarrass us. we're a good Protestant family. You get in there. You look ridiculous. I've got to get on. It's a great moment. He gets a big laugh. And so I kind of played him for laughs, and it worked. McGee loves it. He wasn't insulted in any way. But since I made the film, I've become big pals with him, and I like him immensely. He's a top bloke.
Life with Brian, life with Brian, life with Brian.
Speaking of films, Richard, I rewatched your film directorial debut the other day, 16 Years of Alcohol, which contains a nice couple of visual references to Hibs and Celtic, which obviously chimes with your childhood. I found it quite a surprisingly serene movie, considering the turmoil that the lead character Frankie is going throughout his life there. And I just wanted to know, how much of it is about yourself or your upbringing? How autobiographical is it?
It's a mixture, really, of me and my oldest brother. My oldest brother was killed, and so it was really, I wanted to do something about it, and I really, it was a really terrible moment when that happened. He was. I mean, just something really bad happened to him in India, and I don't know. So when I wrote the script, I kind of wanted to merge the two of us together in a kind of way, to kind of capture the tragedy of what happened to him, and also the instability of my kind of early years, and actually, weirdly enough, in alcohol terms, my mother was pretty bad with alcohol. My father wasn't. So I kind of played around with it a little bit and moved the characters about. So it's not essentially a memoir, as in this is my story, because that would be very deceitful. But I think it captures the atmosphere of what our life was like. And my father was a bit of a Lothario. He was a very handsome man, and women liked him a lot. And yeah, so that's all in the film, his kind of behaviour, which kind of drove my mum to alcohol, I guess. In a funny way, Mark, by the time I was 15, I was already leaving. You know what I mean? I was already gone. I wanted to get the hell out of that whole world, and from that moment, really kind of led a very transient life, just moved around. I went to live in Berlin when I was a kid for a while and came back. And I knew my time was up with music after the Armory show, because the Armory show, let's not beat about the bush here, the Armory show was a disaster. It was meant to be huge, and it just wasn't. And meanwhile, across the roads, Big Country was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it was kind of rubbing it in my face a bit. Although I think, if I'm allowed to say so, the Armory show were trying to do something a little bit more interesting than the Big Country were more of a kind of rock band that became a very identifiably Scottish rock band. We were trying to do more than that, but we were doomed from the first day, because John, my songwriter and buddy, was just out there. So I had to find other things to do in my life, and I've always loved film, and I've loved film because I loved going to the cinema as a kid, because it was a dark space, and I liked sitting in a dark space on my own because of my health condition, probably. And I still retain that great love of being in the cinema. So when I worked at Sky, for example, that was a great job. I got to go and interview so many amazing people and talk to them about the films. I also had to interview people who weren't so amazing. I've got so many stories I could tell you from that period.
Name names.
Another book.
Yes. So it was great. But then I was given the opportunity to make some films. And it worked really well for me. I think in the end, the cinema thing is very difficult because there's so much money involved. And it's a massive collaboration. And you need lots and lots and lots of money. So I've kind of stood back a bit from it for a while. Actually, the thing that I like doing the most is sitting writing. I've been writing a lot of books, and I've really enjoyed that, because it's just me, a piece of paper, my pen, then I transcribe it to my computer, and I can do that on my own, which I really like. But with a movie, sometimes, you know, I don't know. You look around you sometimes, and you just see so many people that are around, you know, sitting around you, and you think, what the hell am I doing? This juggernaut, how do I control this? And you can't. So it gets kind of out of control. I mean, I made a movie based on a Skids song called A Woman in Winter. I don't know if you ever had a chance to see that film. It was set in Edinburgh, and I used this beautiful French actress in it. And I had to do my first sex scene, Brian. So I was filming this sex scene. I was thinking, how the hell am I going to do this? So you do a closed shot, so it's just the actor and the actress, me and the cameraman. That's it. Everybody else has to leave, and we're filming this. And I said to them, it's just very soft. It's not anything pornographic. Just you wear your pajama bottoms and you wear your slip, and it'll be over before it started. So they took.
Sounds like the real thing.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I was just talking from experience, and I said to them, you know, so let's do it. So they took their dressing gowns off, and they were both naked. I went, oh no. It's a story. And the cameraman looked at me, and I looked at him, because we were just standing there staring at them. And then the actor said, are we going to do this or what? And the reason we were standing there, said, we have never seen a cock this big in our life. This guy had this thing. As the same in life. It was like the Baron's arm. And it was on the way up. And we were like, holy fuck, look at that thing. You could have put a flag on it, you know, and nobody would have noticed. And so, so there's been moments where, you know, it's been a joyous thing to do. I've loved it. And there's other times where it's just like, it's the most ridiculous thing in the world, you know. But, and sometimes, Brian, there's no joy, you know, like the joy of you scoring the winning goal in a game. It must be something that, you know, that you retain for all your life. None of the rest of us will ever experience. But, you know, sometimes you make a movie like Mark mentioned, 16 Years of Alcohol, and then it comes out, and I think it's a bittersweet, quite accomplished little film, you know, I made with very little money. And somebody gives it a terrible review, you know, and just destroys it. And your life crumbles through that, you know. It's so the joy you should feel. With that, I did win an award with it. I won Best Director Award at the BIFAs, which is the alternative BAFTAs. And I remember making a speech, and I said, I've never won anything in my life before. And I remember telling my mum, the only other thing I won was when I was in the Skids, and the NME voted us the best punk band in Scotland. And my mum didn't want me to be in a band, you know, so I went back and said, listen, look, we've just been voted best punk band in Scotland. And she said, that's fine, but you're the only punk band in Scotland. Which is totally true. Which was, yeah. So, you know, as I say, I've had quite a journey, and it's been great fun, a lot of it. And some of it hasn't been much fun. Some of it's been absolutely dire. And some of the work that I've done has been dire. You know, it's not as good as I thought it was going to be. And sometimes you get clouded by your own arrogance, you know, sometimes, and you do stuff that you shouldn't have done. And I'm aware of that.
Yeah, but you're only going to ever learn about those things when you've done them, and then you look back on them and went, well, maybe I shouldn't. You know, when you're sitting there as a 15-year-old in a library dreaming, I imagine you would be dreaming about, how do I get out of here? What's my life going to be like? When you look back at it now, you must be proud of what you've achieved, irrespective of whether we're good or bad or indifferent.
Yeah.
Because you've done some amazing things.
Well, the words have been given a chance to breathe. And normally with a Skid song, people normally talk about Stuart Adamson's wonderful guitar playing and stuff. But the words have been given an opportunity, I think. So, and they really stand up. You know, Into the Valley still stands up, and Working for the Yankee Dollar. And as I said to you earlier, with Masquerade, we got a bit of Guernica in there. You know, it's so the words actually I'm very proud of. You know, and these were all written, and you think about the Sense of Coming, written in Dunfermline Library in 1976, and suddenly U2 and Green Day, the two biggest rock bands in the world, combine and do a version of that song together. and for charity, of course. But that song went to #1 in every country in the world, which is extraordinary, really, isn't it? It's an extraordinary thing.
That's what I'm saying. Something you're sitting there as a 15-year-old thinking, well, this is something that's coming in my head. I'm writing it down, and it seems to rhyme. It might go to music, and then you're sitting here now, all these years later, you must be thinking, wow, pinch yourself, you know.
I don't know about that. I'm not really, I don't really look over my shoulder that much. And I'm thinking about what's next, what can we do next, you know. And I think the nice thing about what I try to do, at least, it's never driven by money. Not that I have a lot of money or anything, but that's not the driving force. And sometimes I'm with people and you can see the cogs turning, you know, when they're talking to you, and it's just about money. It's very mercenary. And the stuff that I love kind of is almost secondary to that. Whereas I like coming at it from that side. And then it works, you know, I mean, it just works. And people, you know, I take my books on tour with me. The reason I started playing again, I thought, how do I get these books to people? You know, you could try and get in Waterstones, but there's not very many Waterstones left, you know. And what do I do with these books that I'm writing? So I wrote this book about David Bowie called The Speed of Life.
Yeah.
And it was about two aliens who come to Earth to find David Bowie. And it's really all about, they were trying to work out, because the planet they come from, creativity doesn't exist. They're trying to work out what it is. And they heard his music from a satellite, and it gave them a tingle factor. And it was about trying to explain what this thing is, you know, and it's almost impossible to explain. Like, what was the first record that gave you the tingle factor? Like, what was the first piece of vinyl that you put on your record player and put that needle on it, and you went, holy shit, this is it?
For me?
Yes.
Well, the first single that I bought was Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. But it wasn't that. But it wasn't that. When I flipped it over, was a better song on the other side. Which is? There Ain't Half Been Some Clever Bastards.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Well, that's a great song.
So I thought that for me was the A side, but sometimes the B side was more of a, and sometimes it was a way of sneaking a song into people's consciousness, you know, because they would never sell that. You couldn't put that on. They wouldn't give you the W.H. Smiths where I used to go buy my records when I was a kid. You couldn't buy that, you know, but you could buy Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. Well, interesting enough, one of our B-sides has haunted me throughout my... Because on the B-side of Into the Valley is a live version of a thing called TV Stars. Yeah, and it's got this chorus of Albert Tatlock.
Yeah, Albert Tatlock. I know.
Yeah, I mean, we actually name-checked Kenny Dalglish in that song. And so we sometimes we go on stage, you know, and it's a big gig, say at Albert Hall or whatever, and they just start shouting Albert Tatlock at me. You're going like, that's the biggest load of pish that I wrote. It's like the worst song. I did it as a joke. And so we did an acoustic show the other night, and it was brilliant. It was in London, this great venue. But the promoter gave the wrong time of the gig. He said it was 7:30. It wasn't until 9 o'clock. So there was a whole bunch of people there who just were on the lash, you know. So the time we came on stage, this is an acoustic gig, right? We're just on there with an acoustic guitar, you know. It's not very mellow. These guys were absolutely rotten with drink, you know. And I thought, it's fine, I can handle it. So I got them all on side, and it was fine. And then about halfway through the show, this guy kept shouting. He was a Scottish guy, and he kept going, Albert Tatlock! Albert fucking Tatlock! I was going like, well, it's not going to work acoustically, pal. Do you know what I mean? And she said, why don't you calm down? He goes, playing that fucking song, Albert Tatlock! So, as a joke, we did it acoustically, and it was terrible, right? I mean, it's terrible electrically, but it's even worse acoustically. So we did it. And everybody's clapping and laughing and all that shit. So I said, we've done that now. Let me go. So I'm trying to tell a story, and he's interrupting. He goes, Albert fucking Tatlock! I said, we just played it. Play it again. At which point in time, this big guy gets up and he just bangs someone in the face and goes, "Shut your puss," he said. I went, "Oh my God, it's an acoustic gig." It's all kicked off. I was like, this song, I hate this song so much. We can't even do an acoustic show without it ruining our evening.
Could you hear the rock on in the background?
Yeah, it was. It's funny, but as I say, it's the magic of the journey has been that when you're telling these stories now, people really want to hear the stories,
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying. They're brilliant.
One of the great ways of selling my book, my biography, Into the Valley, as I say, I tell them the story of me and Steve Jones getting off with Legs and Co, the two dancers from Legs and Co. And I said, "Oh yeah, I was still a virgin, and I was completely didn't know what I was doing." But Steve said, "Don't worry about it. I'll show you how you do it." So we got back to this flat, and I go, "And to get the rest of the story, you need to buy the book, page 62. and trust me, it works every time. It's really good. It's hilarious.
I was going to say, Richard, you're obviously on tour right now, aren't you? You're right in the middle of this tour as we speak. So, I mean, how's it going? Is it you getting?
Well, it's I think we've got to a stage where we can only do the weekends, because the knees need to recover. And I think COVID was really difficult for people in bands. I felt very sorry for young people, because still going to a live gig is a very joyous experience, and there's a lot of kind of personal interplay, and it's very physical, and all of that was taken away. So it's kind of great to be back out again, but I like to mix it up. So I like to do a lot of acoustic stuff and then do some we're doing Scarborough Punk Festival this week coming, and I'm really looking forward to it. There's going to be, it's completely sold out. It's in Scarborough, which is a great place. And there's going to be a lot of people with Mohicans who shouldn't really have Mohicans at their age. But, I don't really care about any of those things. I've never been a judgmental person. How can you be in a punk band and be judgmental? I was judgmental about people who had Genesis albums or Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And, I said because it was very tribal. Punk rock was a very tribal thing. Whereas nowadays, kind of like my son, he listens to Led Zeppelin, he listens to Joni Mitchell, and then he listens to some rap music. They just mix it all up, in a way that we would never have done, which I think is to be commended, I think.
Are you seeing that kind of audience? Are you seeing a younger audience? It's not just, bald fat blokes, to quote you earlier on. Are you seeing a newer generation of fans that are coming to see your shows?
Yes, I am. I mean, but listen, I'm never going to condemn the Fat Pound. I mean, the Fat Pound has replaced the Pink Pound. It's it's where the money is. Yeah, it's really funny. So when I'm at the St. Pauli games, you look around you, and I'm the oldest guy by a hell of a long way, right? But my attitude is young. I'm still a young person in my mind and in my heart. But obviously, physically, I'm not. But everybody else is young because it's cheap. And then when I occasionally watch a Premier League game, right, and you cut to like a Man United game or something, and, say, I don't know, Jadon Sancho scores a great goal or whatever, cuts to the crowd. Everyone's really old. Especially, Man City, I really noticed that with Man City. And my German friends have asked me, why is that? The young people not want to go through. I say they can't afford to because the price of the tickets are so insanely expensive. That it's, and also, it's not seated in Germany, so it's got a different kind of experience, a different kind of atmosphere. I really like the thing they've done at Celtic with that, safe standing thing that they do with the Green Brigade. I think that's brought a lot of atmosphere back to the club, and I think I think a lot of the English clubs need to follow that now because I think the time is right. The stadiums are better, they're safer.
Yeah, I think it's heading that way, isn't it?
It has to, because the atmosphere has to come back. Some clubs do. Crystal Palace, I think, do a really good job. They've got a bit of a vibe with what they've created there. But I don't know, I even felt that at the Arsenal game, Liverpool game the other night. They don't have any songs. I could spend the rest of the evening singing you Celtic songs and songs that I shouldn't be singing because they're probably illegal. So maybe I should keep my mouth shut.
But that's the terrace culture, isn't it? Going back to what you were saying about in the 70s, you could just bunk in, you could queue up, you could get in, and you'd learn those songs with your mates, and you'd stand with your mates.
Yes, exactly.
That doesn't happen now. If you get a ticket for Arsenal, you have to book 2 months in advance, or you get one
exactly right. On that note, can I just say something? One of the biggest influences on me as a songwriter was being on the terraces at Celtic Park and singing those songs. And that's where I learned about choruses. That's where I learned about anthems, because the Skids songs were very anthemic. And that's where it all started from. It started from there. And that's where I kind of picked up a lot of those ideas, probably in an unconscious way at the beginning, but then very consciously as we evolved. That, you would, like songs like Hurry On Boys has definitely got a kind of football element now. A team called Fortuna Dusseldorf used that song. And it's been interesting to see how football clubs use your songs. Dunfermline still use Into the Valley, as do Charlton Athletic. But Saints Are Coming is used by Southampton, St Johnstone, St Mirren, and the New Orleans Saints. It's very weird.
Great bit of marketing on your point.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's all to do with, and of course St Pauli, most importantly for me. But I think it's all to do with the U2 version of the song. It was a charity record, so all the money went to kids who lost their musical instruments during Hurricane Katrina. And my wife said to me, she said, yeah. You gave all the money, every single penny. I said, come on, you're from Fife. You must have kept something. Very horrible thing to have said to me. But no, all the money went to the kids, yeah. So I took nothing.
Were you a terrace chanter in your day?
Terrace chanter?
Were you, Brian? Did you used to get stuck in, or were you more of a passive, do you sit there on your hands?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I would be passive. Yeah, but I'm not now.
No, you haven't been in with the Green Brigade yet, no.
Yeah, well, I've got an invite.
Have you?
Yeah.
They come over to Pauli, those guys, and they're because Pauli have got these fan clubs. There's one in Glasgow, Brian. They're called Glasgow Pauli, and they're good guys. They do a lot of good charitable work. I mean, I've contributed to some of their stuff. And, they're really genuine people, and care about refugees and things like that, So,
well, I mean, part of my intention was to go and visit some of these things before lockdown. So Pauli was at the top of the list. But then lockdown kind of kiboshed all that kind of thing.
You still go, Richard, don't you? You still go to games? I
do, yes. When I moved to Berlin in 1979 with my girlfriend, who was from there, sadly she died in the apartment we shared, but I think she was the first time I ever went to see them was with her. She bought me a ticket because we were going to go and see a team called Hertha Berlin, and the team that was in the East, that was Union, who are now in the Bundesliga. Obviously, we couldn't go over to see them, but I saw Hertha a few times, but didn't really have any feelings for it. And then I went to Pauli the first time, and it was just the same as that thing I told you. As soon as I first went to Celtic Park, it was like I was home. Just knew I was in the right place. I went into the stadium at Millentor, and they had been adopted by all these punks in that area because there was a lot of squatters and punks in that area of Hamburg. And they had just adopted the team. The team hadn't a clue where all these crazy-looking punk people had came from. They hadn't actually consciously went and looked for them. It's just because they were the neighbourhood team, and everybody hated HSV for the right reasons, So, and it was those squatters and punk rockers that turned the club into what it is today. I think it's ideology. I remember right at the very beginning, because I was there, and they knew I was the guy from the Skids. So I was in a pub called the Jolly Roger, a very famous pub, and they just said, would you do a set? And I went, yeah, why not? You stick the guitar on, up you go, and did a set, and became part of the clan, and that's it's in my blood now. And I still go to the Jolly Roger, and I still go out and play a song to this day. So
well, there you go, Brian. We'll have to do a live podcast on the Jolly Roger one.
Oh, you'd love it. You'd love it. It's a bit mental.
Montclair's mailbag. Montclair's mailbag. Montclair's mailbag.
I'm very tempted to sing Into the Mailbag to the tune of Into the Valley, but I'll spare you all. Matthew, if you please.
Okay, we've only got a few this week, but the first one's for Richard, and it says, and I'm quoting here, Into the Valley, Peas Sure Sound Divine, was a Maxwell Tapes TV advert from 1990 that ripped the pish. Did it make you angry or happy for the free promotion?
I got to say, I was kind of pissed off. I don't want to sound like a killjoy here, but I wrote that song. The area I lived in Central Fife, your job opportunities were very few and far between. And big industry like coal mining and even working the docks and recycling were ending. So the only other opportunity open to you was to join the British Army. And a lot of my friends joined the British Army and ended up in Belfast. And they had a terrible time there. And they came back and they were different. They were very different to what they were before they went there. They knew I had a different point of view about what was going on in Northern Ireland. And my sympathies were more with the nationalist community. But, you know, when they came back, they were definitely different people. And that's what I wrote Into the Valley about. So I used the beginning from the Tennyson poem about the Crimean War, about the charge of the Light Brigade, Into the Valley Road the 600. So that's where it took me. So underneath the kind of pumping anthemic thing is a very serious song about how people's personalities are stripped. I mean, it was originally called Depersonalized, not very catchy, but that will give you more of a sense of what I was trying to write about. So when they suddenly did that and took the piss out of the words, I mean, listen, you've got to be gracious about these things. You go, yeah, of course, it's funny. But in fact, I didn't think it was very funny. I was recently invited on to the One Show, you know, on that terrible program on BBC. Mm-hmm. So because they were doing a thing about taking the piss out of songs that people misunderstood, and they wanted me to come on and kind of laugh at my own song. And I went, listen, you guys can laugh at it. You can do whatever you want. I'll never stand in your way. I will never prevent you doing that. You should carry on. But trust me, I'm not going to come and join you to do that because it means more to me than that. So, you know, but I think you've just got to take these things in your stride and say, well, that's how people are. And we live in a culture that's always looking for a laugh, you know, and they'll find a laugh wherever they can get one without actually digging a little bit deeper and thinking, actually, maybe that's inappropriate. But that's the way it is. So I just had to go along with it and keep doing about it. Otherwise,
did they ask your permission for that? I'm sure they had to.
They didn't have to. Unfortunately, because I certainly wouldn't have given it to them. I get a lot of asks for the use of songs. Like sometimes it's kids making a short film, you know, and I go, you can have it for nothing, or maybe it's a big TV thing or a movie, and they pay the money, you know, that's fine. But I certainly wouldn't have allowed that. No chance. But at that point in time, I wasn't really in a place where I could have done anything about it. But you know, as I say, you just got to roll with these things, haven't you? Because otherwise, you come across as being a bit of a, you know, pompous killjoy. Yeah. And so I've just got to roll with it and just go. You laugh. I'm just not going to laugh with you.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. We got one from Cumbrian Dave, always friend of the show, regular, and it's a bit of a quick fire top three. And he says to you, Richard, name your favourite band, film, and footballer, not your own. So I assume he's talking about your band and your film, not the football. I think I can guess at least one of those. But so favourite band, favourite film, favourite footballer.
Favourite band, God, it's more. Well, I mean, it changes, doesn't it? Your favourite. I mean, I saw Echo and the Bunnymen the other week, and I love them again. So I've fallen back in love with Echo and the Bunnymen. So they're probably my favourite band at the moment. But 2 weeks ago, I might have been listening to the early Who album or The Clash or something. You know, it just depends on how you feel at that moment. But the Bunnymen were back on form, and Ian's a legend, and Will was playing guitar better than I've ever heard him play. So they were amazing. What was the other favourite book?
Favourite film. I mean, you can say
favourite film.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Stanley Kubrick, so it would have to be one of his. I would probably go for Full Metal Jacket, and what was the third thing? Favourite footballer.
And now don't feel obliged here, because I get the feeling it's.
No, I'm a big fan of Brian's.
I was going to ask you about that after, but I
am a big fan. I think, if you don't mind, Brian, I'm going to go with Dalglish on this, because when I was a kid, I remember on my wall, I had Muhammad Ali, Pele, and Kenny Dalglish on my wall as a kid, and it doesn't get much better than those three, does it? During that period, and then the next wave of people came through, and Brian was amazing at Celtic. He was such an intelligent football player, and hard. You were a tough guy, Brian. You took a lot of stick, but you were a tough guy. And you had all the skills, silky skills, and you were a goal scorer, and a goal maker, weren't you? And then you went to United and just became, I guess a modern icon. But I still fondly remember you in the hoops and all the great things you did when you were at Celtic, especially when you played against Rangers. That was just always a joy. You seem to play with a smile in your face.
Well, you're supposed to enjoy yourself, so.
Well, that's true.
That's what all those things are about, So.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think a lot of players don't realise that, these are great moments in your life. You've just got to grasp them and because there will be something that you can have with you for the rest of your time. These great moments, these cup finals and scoring the winning goal, and the roar of a crowd must be quite something.
Well, there was something about the passing of time, Richard, that when I joined Celtic, I was 19 and Tommy Burns was 27. And Tommy Burns said to me one day, "What age are you, son?" I said, "I'm 19, Tommy." He says, "I'm 27. In 2 weeks' time, you'll be 27. And I thought, what a weird, strange thing to say. And here I am, double that age, and it feels like 2 weeks.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it? Amazing.
Do you think, this is going to, I don't mean to embarrass you, Brian, but I will do. Do you think Brian gets as much credit from a Celtic point of view that he deserves? Because I know when we do this and we do whatever, we do shows or we put stuff on Twitter, you're obviously remembered as a big United man, but I wonder sometimes whether from a Celtic point of view, you're as get the recognition you deserve. So I'll ask you.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm not sure he does, and but I think when you sit down and have a proper conversation with Celtic fans who know their stuff, and there's many of them, then Brian's name will always come into the equation. As will Tommy Burns, of course, Danny McGrain. These names are indelible, so that they're there, and they did amazing things for the club, and were big people. I remember the first time I met Danny McGrain, I was so nervous because I used to stand in the jungle when Danny would play right in front of me. And what an amazing football player that guy was. And then I met him, and he was just the most gracious, gentle, kind man. And I thought, I expected him to be, somehow or other, I thought he'd be a shit and just dismiss me, but he was completely the opposite. He was so, when I told him the story of how I used to stand and watch him every week, and my favourite player was a fullback, for Christ's sake, but he was like a fullback, like Kieran Tierney's a fullback, he's more like a winger, and way before, these type of players exist like they do now. He was something else, wasn't he, Brian?
This is where Brian says he's a shit.
No, I would, if I could say that, I would say that, but no, Danny's. Danny was a real gentleman, as Richard said. And,
that club made a lot. Paul McStay, when I first met him, who I loved, I thought he was an aristocrat on the park, and he was a very gentle man, and very nice, and
there's not many that are shits, Richard. No. Not many that I've come across. I've played with anyway, so I mean.
You played with that United team. There was a few boozers in that team, wasn't there?
There were a few boozers, but you're talking about that type of person, and you mentioned them before that you come across.
Yeah,
would fit in that category. And you were right to make the judgment, and you'd be correct from lots of different views. Was Speedy?
Yeah.
I think you've only got to read Pat Nevin's book to know what he thinks about that.
That was a tough team, though. I mean, you've got players like Whiteside and Robson. You don't push these guys over, do you? I mean, these were tough guys. I mean, you wouldn't like to play against them.
No, he didn't want to play against them.
But certainly playing with them, I mean, it must have been.
Oh, yeah, it was a joy. Yeah, it's a joy. Yeah, and as I say, I feel that I've had a wonderful time in football, which has continued to happen. Although I'm not working directly in football, but allows opportunities like this to discuss with you and chat and laugh and joke with you about life, the universe, and everything, which gives me so much pleasure, Richard. You know, and to hear you enjoying yourself, you know, in such a way of you're happy telling stories, like I'm happy telling stories when I've on the occasion that I do it, you know.
Yeah, I think if you took those two things away from me, I think my life would be, I don't know, it would be bereft, because it still means an awful lot to me, you know. And even the memories of the football the games that I've seen, and that just were like, you know, big eye-opening moments when you, like I say, when I got to see the Lisbon Lions for the first time, and realised that I'd found home, even though my old man used to try and take me to see Hibs. Come on, Hibs are the team. And of course, the Skids were all Dunfermline fans. You know, they used into the Valley, and they wanted me to be, because they thought, oh, don't do that Glasgow thing, you know. But they didn't really understand. It was a familial thing, you know. It was a family thing. It was it meant it was like the missing link in your life. And there it was, you know. So it replaced that. So it gave me a lot, and set me on my way. But actually, weirdly enough, as I said right at the very beginning of this, my journey wasn't supposed to go on this long. I really thought I'd be up by, I don't know, 21, 22 or whatever. I mean, I didn't put a number on it. I just thought I'm not going to be around for long. So you've got to squeeze the juice out every day. And I did do that. I mean, I can tell you so many stories. I mean, you know, the next time we're together, and
when we do the live show in Hamburg,
yes, indeed,
yeah. Well, mine was a similar thing, though, Richard, because it's down to mortality with football players, and you mentioned earlier about your knees. Mine was 35. I thought I'd get to 35. Delighted, and I did get to that age as a player, and I never thought it would perpetuate in any way after that. But here I am still being involved in football and music and other different things.
But for you were always interested in other 60, stuff.
You know?
Yeah, but you were already interested in other stuff anyway. And that's the thing that's probably kept your brain alive, you know?
Of course you have. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'd write all the way through my thing that I don't think I've said to many times before. I entertained myself every day a lot by asking questions of my teammates that I knew that would rile them, annoy them, irritate them. I wasn't doing it for just for that particular reason, because I had different views on life, and it was so I could turn around and say, well, so one of my kind of issues about football and football players, and it's probably maybe it has, maybe it's not changed, is that we all came from the same kind of background. You know, we all came from working class backgrounds, and nearly all footballers throughout the world still come from working class backgrounds. And I found, like in the Clash song, that they changed their vote with their overcoat.
Yeah.
And they had this idea that because they thought they had more money in their pocket, they were actually wealthier. And I was trying to explain to them, but what about the introduction of VAT? What about the introduction of VAT on this? What about even then, going back 35 years ago, what about the non-funding of the NHS? It's going to affect us now that we've got to this age and all this kind of thing. And it was all about the now.
Yeah,
like they didn't think, so then I just used to use it as my own amusement, to get a rise out of them and create an argument and a debate and whatever else it is. And when you're arguing from the point of, from real belief and real Well, yeah, from saying that this is me, this is what I'm not going to change. That I can't. My parents and where I was brought up, this is how you were brought up. I cannot, irrespective of whatever amount of money you earn or whatever, can I buy a car that costs more than my parents' house?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, and I used to listen to these conversations and I go, what are you on about? But I says, well, I can't be party to any of that, you know. So.
Yeah. I remember that great story when Jurgen Klinsmann joined Tottenham and, you know, Terry Sheringham was parking his new 911 and Klinsmann pulled up with his old VW, bashed up VW, and Sheringham said to him, "Do you mind moving that away from my car?" You know, and he's like, because his values were so different, you know, from people like his, and then you think about the people who are the kind of mentors, the kind of guiding lights like Busby, Shankly, Jock Stein. These were amazing men. These were men who knew. I've never met Ferguson, but I presume he's a man who knew where he came from, and he used that a lot. And certainly, it seems that he used that. You would know better than me, but these people seem to, and obviously Brian Clough, they kind of knew where they came from, and they knew what people's lives were like beyond the bubble of the team and the success of the team or whatever. That people's lives were. I know that, Brian, even with the people that come to see my band still, I know that it's a working class audience I've got.
Yeah.
They're not an art school audience. They're not this. No. The people that come to see me don't go and see Nick Cave or even Echo and the Bunnymen. It's a different type of audience that come to see me. And I know that. That's why I said, and I didn't mean to be patronising to say, I want them to read these books because I'm trying to do something.
No, but that's part of the same sort of place that they came from. If all these different people, they're all different people like us, had the opportunity to write books and tell stories about, there'd be interesting stories in there. There might not be the same kind of interesting stories that maybe we have, because we've gone down a path that has involved meeting lots of different people and lots of different experiences. But they'll have plenty of good stories.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Recently, we did a gig in Brighton. And when we first started touring with the Skids, it used to piss me off that the venues we played in, I wasn't legally allowed to go into those venues, but I was because I was playing with the band. But if I was my age, I wouldn't be able to do those gigs. So I demanded that we did a matinee before we did the show in the evening. Right. So the people who were my age could come to the gig. So we did a 5 o'clock, no bar open. All the promoters said, if you want us, you have to do it. They didn't want to do it because it's like people had to do a double shift or whatever. And my band, didn't want to play twice in the same day, 5-6 days a week. And I said to them, well, you either do it or I'm not doing it. That's it. There's no choice in it. So we did it. And we kept doing that right to the very end before we split up. It sounds a bit dodgy now, but it's called Skids for Kids. And we turned up on a school with the permission of the headmistress or the headmaster. And we would be on the back of a flat pack truck and we'd do 6 songs, 7 songs in their lunch break, kids. And the night before, you'd maybe be on Top of the Pops or something. And these 12, 13-year-olds were seeing this band that they saw the night before. And they're like, holy shit, they're in my school. So we played Brighton the other week. And I was coming out after and I always try and come out and talk to people, although it's been difficult with the COVID thing. But anyway, I make an effort to come out and if anybody's still about to have a chat or whatever. And there was all these guys standing there. And they said, oh, this is the first time we've been able to see you because we were too young to see you even for the matinee gigs. But you came and played in our school in Brighton in 1980 or 1981. And it was the first band we ever saw. And it changed our lives that day. And we got to see you tonight. And there's all these guys, all from the same school, all in their 50s or whatever. So I went for a walk with them all along the front, the front in Brighton. Yeah. And it was just great because they know my story. So, I'm not telling them any more about me. I was just listening to their stories. And some of them had a great life, made a few quids, nice family, all very settled, and a bit of fun here and there. And some of them had an absolutely torrid time. They had drugs, booze, bad marriages, prison, you name it, you know what I mean? But it's just amazing to be with them, you know, to hear their stories and their life, and the fact that moment that they identify is the moment where they fell in love with music was you're in the back of a truck, you know, playing a song in their schoolyard when they're 12 and 13, and it stayed with them so much that they all, through Facebook, got back together again and came to the gig. It was magic, absolutely magic to hear them. So it was, you know, that's part of the ongoing journey of this. You know, you're still kind of hearing these wonderful stories.
The journey goes on.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's where we'll leave it. Richard, really, really appreciate you sharing your time with us. Fantastic having you on. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Oh, I've loved it. I've had such a great time, and I've got to meet one of my heroes, which has been fantastic. Brian, thank you so much. You're a legend, and it's been a joy. I knew you would be a great guy, and I got that wrong. What a wanker.
Richard, where can our listeners keep abreast of what you're up to and the Skids tour dates and so on?
That's probably the Skids website, you know, and see what's going on. And I think we just put my biography up for sale tonight. So it's a limited edition thing. So, Brian, you better get yourself a copy. You know what I mean? Because you don't get any freebies from a fifer.
I'm not looking for freebies from anybody. I'm quite happy to pay my way. Don't worry about that.
But listen, next time you want to, we're near you or whatever, let me know, because I would love you to come along. Come along to the Glasgow show for sure. And
I've got that. I was looking at Dunfermline in Glasgow. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I've had such a great time chatting with you guys. It's I hope I didn't warble on too much, but
no, not at all.
Encouraged me to talk, which was great.
Brian, Matthew, thanks very much as always, guys.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you too, and of course, Richard.
Yeah, and of course, a big thanks to our listeners. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Brian McClare Pod for updates and various nonsense, and hit subscribe on whichever platform you prefer to listen to your podcasts on. So until next time, take care, and we'll see you then.
Life with Brian. Life with Brian. Talking films or music. Life with Brian. Talking TV and food. Life with Brian. Talking trivia and exercise. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Talking politics and football. Life with Brian. It's different every episode. Life with Brian. Life with Brian.